Welcome to Byrna's Hot Take, where we discuss tactics, tips, training, and strategies on all topics about self-defense so that the time comes you are prepared to defend. Today, I have a special guest for you today. This is Dr. Jenn. She's going to give you a little bit of her background, but she has a very versatile background in all things self-defense, and we're so excited to have you on the show. Tell a little, Byrna Nation a little bit about, kind of how you got here and a little bit of your background.
Thanks, Josh. I'm super excited to be here. I have so many of your products. I'm a little bit later to the game with this product. I started in law enforcement very young. At age 16, I was an explorer with the Sheriff's Department. I trained with the SWAT team. I did dispatch. I went out on patrol all the time. When I finally turned 18 and started college, I interned with what is now ICE and the U.S. Marshal Service. Eventually went at 21 when I was old enough, went to the Law Enforcement Academy in Colorado, and then I worked for several years as a law enforcement officer before actually going back into the military. I was in the Naval Reserve for 8 years during those years, and then eventually went into the military where I worked as a lawyer and a military judge. Finally got out and became an emergency physician, really. So, like, I've been around.
So you fit med school in there somewhere.
I've done a few things, but I mean, the bottom line is that I've been around law enforcement and around self-defense my whole life, pretty much. And I'm currently actually working as an expert witness in a lot of self-defense types of cases. And, it's really interesting because I've been doing this for so long, and I've had concealed carry permits for as long as I have been able to have them, and I take it very seriously. And when I started doing this work, I was like, wow, there are a lot of jurisdictions where you can get into a lot of trouble even if you make the right decision. And interestingly, one of our neighbors, who's also a big 2A guy and former military helicopter pilot, really cool guy, he told us about Byrna. He's like, hey, do you guys have this Byrna handgun? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what is it? And he's like, well, it's actually not a gun, it's a projectile launcher. And he is so worried about the legal environment, and he should be, because it's
kind of the current state
it is.
That we're in. Yeah, absolutely.
It is. And so we went down and we had a look at his, and we bought one, and then we bought another one, and then we bought another one and another one. And so we ended up getting a Byrna for every car that we own, and then one for the house as well. And
then we of course met at, was it SHOT Show this year? Was that the first time we met? SHOT Show was great this year. We got a chance to catch up with Dr. Jenn and some of her colleagues and hear your story, and your perspective was so profound as to just all the things that you've been able to experience and the wide breadth of legal history and legal background that you've had, and understanding where you're coming from, and then understanding how you feel like less lethal force options and Byrna fits in so well into some of that. And I think that's why we definitely hit it off on that end, and it was just great to hear some of those stories. So what I'd really like to talk about and kind of back up to is with your history as a JAG attorney, and then now as an expert witness, for self-defense and other topics, is you got to have a really good, perspective, a very high-level overview of the current trends that we're seeing in self-defense and the defense of self-defense when it comes to to the legal aspect of it. So what in your history, what were some of the things that you've seen that are big? Big red flags when it comes to making sure that you're doing what you need to do to defend yourself, in a case like that.
Well, I mean, there have been some pretty high-profile cases that have resulted in a good outcome, and others that have resulted in bad outcomes for people who have, in my opinion, properly used lethal force. And so the question in my mind comes down to what is the best outcome for everyone? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you do have to use lethal force, and I am 100% Second Amendment advocate, sure. 100%. But that said, I've personally been in some situations where I'm like, wow, this is a dangerous situation. If I were to use lethal force in this situation, would I be able to defend that in court? And the answer is maybe, maybe not.
It's a hard maybe. I mean, maybe's hard. Maybe's
the rest of your life.
That's a really good way to put it.
So there have been instances where I'm like, wow, I would have done just about anything to have had a Byrna, because in my mind, unless someone is coming into my home, my goal is to stop a threat against me or someone else and get away. That's it.
Well, and we've talked about this. No matter what the weapon you're using or what the tactic you're using is, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to stop the threat. Regardless if that means stop them so that they go away or stop the threat long enough to facilitate my escape. Regardless of what I'm using, that's the actual goal. The goal is never to, even carrying a firearm, the goal is never to kill somebody, right? The goal is that should never be anybody's goal. The goal is to stop the threat no matter what.
And the other thing too is that I really want people to feel empowered and feel like they have the ability, a really good ability to defend themselves. So, I've been in law enforcement. I've done a lot of things. I may look like a little person. I can handle myself pretty well. But there are definitely cases where there are people who don't feel that way and they don't know what to do. And so there have been a ton of people who have run out and bought guns. It's a huge trend because the crime situation in this country is a little bit out of control, I'd say. So people are running out, they're getting guns, but they may have a lot of hesitancy in using them. They may not have a lot of experience using them. And so what I want people to have a tool that they feel 100% confident and comfortable with. And I just feel like this is such a great tool in a wide range of options that you have.
So you told me a story earlier, and I thought it was a great story to kind of use as a case study, almost of appropriate and reasonable levels of or usages of force. If you could kind of tell the Byrna Nation that story, and we'll kind of break it down a little bit into what would have been considered reasonable, what would have not been considered reasonable, and where we could have really fit in a less lethal force option.
Yeah, so as you know, there are a lot of places where you can't carry. California is one of them. So we were on a trip coming back from California in our camper. I jumped out of the car to go get some food while my husband took the truck to a truck stop to fuel up. And I found myself in a very bad situation where there was a young, strong person who was definitely coming after me. I don't know.
So get into a little bit of the details, because I want to really kind of break it down to where at what point do we feel like force would have been reasonable?
Yeah. So I was at a fast food place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't eat fast food very often.
gotta give that caveat. So this is a one-time thing. Hasn't done it again. We cut that out. We've quit. So
exactly. So anyway, it was during kind of the COVID time, and as you know, that restaurant parts were closed. So there was a sign that said, "Go around to the back." This is a very secluded area. There was no one back there, just me. So I went back to the drive-through area. My meal wasn't ready, so they said, "Go to the front and wait." And so I went to the front, and I saw a person who had watched me go back there and big dude, followed me back there, was looking for me in the back, which no one else would have been able to see, and didn't see me there, and turned and saw me in the parking lot and started coming my direction.
So no one else around. So
no.
He's walking your direction. So
right.
So at this point, you kind of realize, hey, he could only be walking toward, like, the only reason to walk this way is to walk towards me.
It was very obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you do at this point?
So I didn't have anything on me. There was a single car, which was the employee of this Taco Bell in the lot. And so I thought, well, I can at least get something physical distance between us and maintain it.
Yep.
So I went behind that car. He saw that I did that and that I was taking evasive action, and he just walked back to the sidewalk where he was and stayed there. It was creepy. And then the person came to the door. I grabbed the food. I didn't actually want to be stuck inside this building with this person out there. I didn't know if he was armed or what.
Sure.
And so I just told them, lock your doors, this guy is sketch. And I ran towards, down towards where this old service station was, where I could get across the highway. And so he started following me. I used everything available to me to keep space between us. I walked in front of cars. I just tried to make sure that he couldn't physically get to me. And so at one point, he walked behind a car. I knew he couldn't see me. And I literally ran, jumped across a ditch, and started running across this highway. And he started running after me.
So now, blatantly obvious. There's no other reason for something.
Yeah, and let me just tell you, I'm a pretty calm person, and I can usually lower my heart rate, but I'm like, damn.
that was, you were struggling to maintain.
Yeah, I was like,
some
wow,
composure.
I'm in a little bit of trouble here. And so I think at that point, if I had a Byrna, I'd have lit him up.
so that's where I kind of want to rewind it to. So if I remember correctly, eventually you made it back to kind of civilization, as it were. Other people, he disengages.
Truck stop being civilization, sure.
As much as you had out there in the middle of nowhere, but
right.
So I want to rewind that, because I get asked, and Byrna gets asked a lot via social media. At what point can I use a Byrna or use a less lethal force option? Because I think that kind of that timing and that appropriateness is lost in kind of a big gray area. So I think this is a great situation to kind of use. So I want you to put on, your prosecutor hat. I want you to put on that JAG hat, and I want to rewind this situation. And for my people out there that that are constantly saying, "Oh, I only need a gun. I'll only ever carry a gun. I only need a gun." At any point, knowing what you went through, at any point, whether he, on the Taco Bell side when he's walking at you, or even when he's running at you, at any point in time, would shooting him with a firearm be considered reasonable in general?
Not a chance.
So, go ahead.
And one of the things that really bothers me about self-defense in these cases is that you don't know what's going to happen. You can be in fear for your life, but is a jury going to say, really, you were afraid because this guy, who knows what... You don't know what was going to happen. Or someone punches you in the head. You don't know if you're going to go down and they're going to kick you until you're dead.
Right.
Or cause a massive head injury that you'll never recover from. You can't know that. And yet people say, well, you can't bring a gun to a fist fight. Well, but how do you know what's going to happen?
Right. You don't. You absolutely. So that, to me, that says the earlier I can intervene with something, the less likely I start removing those unknowns, right?
So for me, I never want to go hands-on.
Sure.
As soon as you're hands-on, you are in trouble.
Agreed.
Even someone like you, a super SWAT guy, whatever.
I'm 5'9", I weigh 145 pounds. I am not going hands-on with anyone because I'm probably going to lose. So.
But you know what I mean, though. So
no, absolutely.
So to me, I always want distance. I never want to go hands-on. If someone's coming at me and I'm giving them commands, stop, stay away from me, at that point, if they're still coming at me, I feel like less lethal force is totally justified.
So in your situation there, going back, at what point would the use of less lethal, including a Byrna, at what point would that have been reasonable, you think?
It would have been reasonable. So when I used that first car as space, if that person was still coming at me and trying to get to reduce that space and get to me, I think that it would have been totally justified then. As soon as that person starts closing that distance on me and I can't maintain a safe distance, it's time.
I absolutely agree, and that's a really good illustrative way to kind of articulate when it's appropriate and when it's reasonable, but also illustrates how early that you can intervene with some sort of force, and some sort of force that's likely to incapacitate and definitely get them to rethink their current path.
And the other thing that I think is so important too that people don't think about when they're carrying their handguns is, I know from my time in law enforcement, and as well, that even very well-trained law enforcement officers miss. They miss a lot.
I'll give you one greater. So in 2018, there was a study that came out of Loyola up in Chicago that looked at a major. It was, I won't say the name but it was a major police department, one of the four largest police departments in the nation, and they looked at their shootings over the 20 years prior to that. So, or actually 18 years prior to that, and how many officer-involved shootings they had, and they looked at every shooting. Their hit rate was less than 40%. And that's trained law enforcement officers.
Yeah.
Now, there's been some other studies that have been done. None of them show a hit rate of greater than 50%.
That doesn't surprise me. So not only are these trained law enforcement officers expecting some sort of interaction, but then you take someone who's not trained, is freaked out, maybe doesn't have a lot of experience, and you're going to be firing every single round out of your gun you are responsible for. If you miss and you hit someone else, you're responsible for that. And I can't even imagine what that would feel like personally.
Just the psychological impact that would have,
It'd be
on
horrible.
you, regardless of the legal impact and the legal battles that you're going to fight for the rest of your life, both criminal and then civilly.
Right.
But yeah, the psychological impact has to be, just absolutely incapacitating.
And I think too, there's another issue for a lot of people, and there really should be, is are you going to hesitate when there's no time to allow for that hesitation? And the truth is that, you really have to make a very high-level decision when using lethal force. The person who is actually coming at you has already made the decision.
Absolutely.
And so you're already
behind the eight ball.
already behind the eight ball. And even if all you're using the Byrna for is to buy you time to decide, is this justified or not, it'll buy you time. And then you can switch to, if you light someone up with Byrna rounds and they keep coming at you, it's go time.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you've done everything. And you kind of talked about that too, as a prosecutor, looking at some of these, when you've done that, your expert testimony, looking at some of these, self-defense cases. I mean, did you see some that was like, hey, look, they tried to use something and it didn't work? Or, does that carry weight, in a court case? Like, let's say you did have to use lethal force, but you started, somewhere, you started with less lethal and you escalated. Is that going to carry weight?
Absolutely, 100%. If you can say, look, it was my only intention to prevent loss of life for myself or someone else, or I thought I was going to be severely injured. I didn't want to hurt the person. I just wanted them to stop. I told them to stop. I used this less than lethal round to stop them. They still kept coming at me. No jury. And first of all, the chances of you being prosecuted in the first place are incredibly low. Incredibly low. And if you were, the chance of not having one juror say, yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, that's all you need, right? You just need one person to say, I'm not convicting this person.
Right.
Even in a place that is very anti-gun. In fact, I would say that you're at an advantage to say, look, I didn't want to use this.
That's, I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Because those people are that jury is more likely to say, like, I get it, and they tried to use something different, but they just ran out of options.
Just kind of a funny story on one case that I successfully helped defend. It was right as the courts were opening after COVID, and you literally had to walk through these very sketch tent cities, and every day the judge would give this safety briefing, but you can't carry anything into a courthouse,
right?
Right? And so you're just kind of walking very susceptibly, like through this gauntlet to get to a courthouse of all places. And I think, honestly, having that experience for the jurors was something that helped. But just being able to put something in someone's mind that you really wanted to do something different than this. Like you were trying everything you could to stop this, and it wasn't stopping. I think everyone can relate to that.
No, I think that's a fantastic point, and you're right. Even in those places where we get a lot of resistance, and the 2A crowd gets a lot of resistance. That's such a great point. And even in those places where they don't, places like Texas, places like Arizona, Florida, all that, it's still such a powerful, message, such a powerful, illustrative aspect of how that's not, they never wanted that to be their goal.
And the one other thing I have so many things to say, but just because I think that this is such an important topic, but every person, every human has a right to defend themselves regardless of their background,
Absolutely.
regardless of where they're from. And one of the things that bothers me is that people are really limited in their options if they've been convicted of a felony, even a white, what do you call it?
White
collar crime. Like someone goes down for fraud and they are no longer able to protect themselves and their family. Or someone who's got a green card who lives in this country. They're not allowed to, I don't think people understand they're not allowed to have guns.
And I think you're absolutely right. There's, depending on the time, there's on average about 4 million convicted felons in the U.S. that are out of jail, off of parole. They've done their time, they've served their debt to society. But you're absolutely right. They still lack the ability to defend themselves, with a firearm. And yeah, the legal immigrants. Every year we get about 500,000, about 500,000 legal green carded or legal immigrants on some sort of visa, here in the U.S. But unless they have that permanent residency status, that citizenship, or that green card status, they are prohibited from purchasing and possessing a firearm. So, I mean, you look at that number alone, and that's a staggering number of people that you're telling can't carry a firearm and now can't have a very good tool to defend themselves. And I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do too, is shore up those numbers.
And another huge group of people who I think would benefit from this are people. I work in the military environment. I've dealt with a lot of people with PTSD, people who make impulsive decisions, also a lot of people with like anxiety and some other mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And it's like they're really vulnerable.
Sure.
And, sometimes I think that I wouldn't want them, even though I'm a big Second Amendment proponent. Sure. Don't light me up over this. I know there's going to be haters out there.
Yeah, there always are.
But there are certain people who probably shouldn't carry a gun.
Absolutely. I think it would be difficult for anybody to completely disagree with that. Everyone knows that one person that there is, and whether it's a mental health issue, whether, like you said, it's an impulsivity issue, or a number of other issues, or just the hesitancy.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of people that carry guns, in all honesty, that haven't had that very retrospective talk with themselves that says, hey, I'm ready to take somebody's life. But they carry a gun every day with the intention that could be the case. And I think that's going to cause, like you said, that's going to cause hesitancy at a time when you can't have it, and it's going to get somebody hurt.
And I want to get back to the whole legal thing, because what you'll be judged by is what is reasonable. What would a reasonable person think? And, in a moment where something, I hate to use this word, but something triggers you and you're freaked out about something, and your one option other than going hands-on is lethal, where it's really questionable. It's really questionable whether or not you should be taking any force, is not good. And the other thing is that, I think that a lot of people have this mistaken belief that if they have a gun on them, they're safe. So something is happening, they pull out the gun. Well, I don't know. You probably are. You're a numbers guy, I know. There are a lot of statistics about people who do have hesitancy or whatever, and that gun being used against them.
Yeah, and that's always a possibility, right? That's if you hesitate in that time when it's even, especially when it's appropriate, especially when, hey, the application of deadly force would have been reasonable because you are, somebody's going to commit serious bodily injury or death to you or somebody else. All you're doing is, by hesitating, is you're giving them more of a chance either to use the weapon that they brought or to use a weapon that they're going to procure, which may very well likely be your own.
Right. I know this is totally like off topic.
There's no off topic.
Like
part.
One of my favorite things that I've ever seen on YouTube was a person in a fast food restaurant, and they're carrying, right? And so someone comes up and they grab their gun. They were open carrying, grab their gun and starts walking out. The person starts running after him and is like, hey, that's my gun. And they're like, no, it's my gun now. And they're like, apparently, you have a point.
Yeah, possession is 9/10 of what's going to happen at that point. So no, absolutely. So So really, I kind of want to bring it around and talk about what you're doing now. And one of the things that I think I know you're excited about, and I'm really excited about too. But and as long as we can talk about it, can we talk
Yep,
about that? Okay,
absolutely.
awesome. So, and talk about your involvement with American Stories and kind of what American Stories is and what they've been doing, and then what you guys have planned for the future.
Oh man, so you can tell I've had an interesting life already.
Clearly.
It keeps getting more interesting. So about 2 years ago, I was informed that there was going to be a show called Surviving Man, M-A-N-N, like the person.
Gotcha.
So Don Mann is a former SEAL Team 6 guy, invented the adventure race, has written like 20 best-selling books, super cool guy. And they wanted to do this survival show. And they said anyone who is a weapons expert and maybe has any military law enforcement background, and I'm jumping in back, like, pick me, like, it's COVID.
Like as a contestant, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like COVID time, ammo's super expensive, and I'm like, you want me to come out and just shoot stuff? Like, of course I want to do this. So I got picked up for this show, and I didn't even know what American Stories Entertainment was, and it was their first show. Since then, I've been on 4 of their shows.
Awesome.
We just, in fact, season 2 of Surviving Man is going to air this Friday.
Oh wow, very cool.
You can just go to www.americanstories.tv and see all of the places you can see it. This fall, it's gonna be shown on the Pursuit Network.
Okay.
Right before Ted Nugent's Call of the Wild show. So hopefully it'll do well. It's a really fun show. So we've been doing that, and my enthusiasm for these types of programs, law enforcement themed, military themed, they do a lot of just really good programming for everyone. So. Sure. They do a lot of football stuff. They do the firearms stuff. Outdoor things. So I was totally into it. I really want to get into this creative space, and so I asked them if I could produce a new show called Lifeline.
Okay.
And Lifeline is going to be a show that will co-star Sheriff Lamb. If you know Sheriff Lamb, he'll be my co-star. And what we're going to do is we're going to put regular people through some common crime scenarios. Things will go south, because they always do. And then we'll stop the action, rewind, and then teach them what they could have done differently, give them a skill, give them a product like the Byrna, and say, these are all of your options, and then we'll restart the action and see how they do. But, I just feel so passionately about teaching people what to do, because people are scared, and people are getting hurt, and they're making bad decisions, but there's so much that you can do. And so not only will it be entertaining, but I think it's going to be a really great public service too.
I'm super excited about it. And I think you're right. I think people are scared, but I think a lot of that fear comes from the unknown. A lot of the fear comes from the fact that they don't know what to do.
Exactly.
And so if we can educate and teach them ways to handle that, and ways to, it takes away a lot of that unknown, and I think subsequently takes away a lot of that fear.
100%. And I want to get back to the Byrna, because I'm not getting paid for this, by the way. But I want to get back to it because it's like the confidence in carrying something, even if you miss, even if you pull the trigger and you were wrong, there's not a whole lot of liability there. Absolutely. And so confidence is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always equate confidence to freedom, right? So people, when you are afraid and you don't want to go to the store, you don't want to go to a convenience store, you don't want to go to Target late at night because I'm afraid, for my safety, that encroaches on your freedom, and your freedom to move, and your freedom to do things. And I think the more confident you are in not necessarily your ability or anything, but just more confident you are that you're going to be able to be safe, and
right.
and it increases and pushes out that freedom. And I think that's ultimately what we all want. It's just we just want to feel safe. That's
right.
It's one of those underlying needs that we all have. And educating, training, and removing that unknown and that fear is really what contributes to that overall safety. So I think what you're doing is great. I'm really excited about Lifeline and American Stories. I think that's going to be a great show.
It's going to be fun.
So if just kind of to wrap it up, if you do some cool stuff on social media too with some training and education as well, right?
I do.
Where can people find you there?
So
that they can, and what kind of stuff do you do that? Because I like looking at some of that.
So
some of this.
Instagram hates me because I'm a doctor who likes guns, and they just can't reconcile the two. So I'm on Instagram at _ Dr. _ Jenn, Jenn.
Okay.
And every week I do a fun Firearms Friday. I've done a couple with Byrna. They're mostly true firearms, just a
Fair enough.
fun drill to do every week. And then I do a Medical Mondays where I do a really fun, interesting health tip or fact.
That's awesome. You get the medical on the beginning of the week and fun Firearm Friday or whatever. That's great. So,
exactly.
Very cool. So definitely go find Dr. Jenn on Instagram. Any other platforms that they can find you on?
I'm on YouTube and Twitter, but I don't. It's pretty much the same content on all of them.
Gotcha.
So
well, there you go. So multi-platform, and then definitely stay tuned to Pursuit Network for Lifeline to come out. What are we looking at this year?
Yeah, so I think we're going to shoot this summer.
Perfect.
And post-production can take a little bit, but definitely check out Surviving Man. Season 1 has been out for a while. Season 2 starts. I'm not kidding. I swam with alligators. They told me there were alligators. I'm like, yeah, right. And
this is a TV thing.
Yeah.
Alligators.
I know.
Great.
I'm like, I didn't see that in the waiver, by the way.
They weren't real specific about wildlife.
But it's exciting. They're really good shows.
Absolutely. Go check out Surviving Man. It is, if you haven't watched it, it's a ride. I'll tell you what, it's a lot of fun. So, and then make sure that you are subscribing to Byrna's channel on YouTube and the podcast as well, so you can get notifications on all your favorite podcast platforms like iTunes, Amazon, iHeart, and the rest. We'll be back with you guys with some more special guests, a live AMA coming up as well, and so many other things. So make sure that you guys are staying tuned, you're subscribing, and you're getting notified so that you're getting all that information so that the time comes, you are prepared to defend.